I'll be reading Tribe of Titans, a fairy tale for adults. Though kids can read them, but it's especially for adults. Bring out the inner child. The furry little cubsters were the first and perhaps last truly intelligent life forms on Earth. Though small, round, and soft, they were quite muscle-bound, hardballs covered with fluff, cute and hard as coconuts, yet filled with warm fluids more nourishing than milk or blood. The first tribe of cubsters had achieved a level of peace and prosperity not known to even today's most enlightened futurist visionaries. Papa, as in the paw of an animal combined with father, Papa, was the biggest, wisest, and most beautiful of the cubsters. He entertained the tribe with his stories and awe-inspiring works of art. The abstract patterns of his spherical sculptures were woven with flowers, colorful rocks, seashells, branches, and other found objects. They resembled the wondrous star formations high in the skies beyond the sky, which could only be seen in the days preceding spiritual myopia, pollution, and galactic imbalance. What's Papa making now? They'd ask in anticipation, and he never ceased to amaze them with works modeled after an evolving night sky universe. But one cubster, Harry, meaning fur combined with the name Harry, didn't share their enthusiasm. This was no coincidence because the cubsters, though they never insulted or abused each other, treated certain members differently. Those who didn't talk, joke, play, or create in a way that they thought was good. Though they didn't ignore Harry, nobody talked too long to him either. Harry had a plan, one which would allow him to be fully accepted by the tribe. He'd create sculptures even greater than Papa's. He announced, I invite you all to my show at the hillside under the midnight moon. You'll see the biggest, craziest objects, more wondrous than the grandest ocean or anything else in our paradise. The cubsters rode their way up the smooth hill, not too steep, like cotton balls carried by the wind. But they stared blankly at the clumped up, hastily piled stones and foliage, which Harry proudly pointed to. But they stared blankly at the clumped up, hastily piled stones and foliage, which Harry proudly pointed to. This heap resembled the debris blown into a beach by a tsunami or typhoon. But they still clapped their hands, saying, A lot of work you put in there, Harry, and very interesting. Thanks for showing us, and keep it up. Suddenly, Papa shouted from a distance, Come down, everybody, and see my new pieces. They rode down the hill faster than they had climbed it. Harry heard them praise, Wow, Pa, this is the best work you've done yet. And they laughed as Pa told another of his feel-good stories about the coming wonders of the distant future. Harry continued to make art, and he always invited them, but they'd cancel it at the last moment, saying, We have more work to do than we thought, and so on. But they always found time to attend Pa's show. Then Harry stopped inviting them, and he disappeared. But the others hardly noticed because Pa always kept them busy and entertained. One morning, Pa found two of his sculptures shattered to bits. How could this happen? What animal could have done this, he thought, or how could the winds be so strong? I tied these things together with the toughest materials. Then more sculptures, including his sturdiest and most intricate, were disassembled like puzzles, like cardboard puzzles. This desecration of our leader's sacred objects are deliberate. Someone or something is doing this out of spite, speculated the Cubsters. Perhaps, but I won't let them discourage our efforts. I won't let them discourage our efforts. I promise to make such beautiful, strong, and elaborate sculptures that not even lightning or fire can ruin them, declared Pa. Pa kept his word and created totem poles carved with the features of the Cubsters. They were as tall as trees, but the mysterious vandal disassembled those obelisks also, leaving them in fragments like snapped branches. Whoever's doing this must have great skills, but who can it be? There's no other being here more clever and skilled than you, Pa. I'm the one who has ruined your precious items, shouted a lumbering, portly shadow from behind the stump of one of Pa's pieces. Harry, you did all this? How can a cubster be so negative, so miserly, considering what we all have, this great forest and ocean? You think that Pa is so great, but I wanted to show you how weak his structures really are. Nothing's too precious that it can't be deconstructed. Nothing's too precious that it can't be deconstructed. Oh, Harry, you're so terrible. How could you? Pa worked so hard to make these for us. This is how you show your appreciation? I wish I felt so good to be appreciative. Harry caused the Cubsters to feel a kind of irritation they weren't familiar with, but it was not negative enough to make them disown him or even curse him. However, they didn't have the wisdom to understand his discontent. They didn't have the wisdom to understand his discontent, so they turned their backs, saying, see you at dinner, Harry, but if you're late again, we'll leave some food for you as always. Talk about tolerance. And Papa said, you're not stopping me from creating, Harry. If you keep breaking my stuff, then I'll just make tougher objects, so complicated that you won't know where to start. Go ahead, Pa, I'll make you quit, yet, and you'll see that I'm just as good or better than you. In the following days, they went back and forth. Sometimes Pa created such meticulous, sturdy structures that Harry would give up and retreat deep into the woods, but the next day he'd return, finding a way to disassemble the sculpture, no matter if it was made of rock, metal, or gold. The Cubsters watched on, commenting on how bad Harry was, though they were convinced that he'd eventually see the error and futility of his ways and change. During their duel, they discovered dozens of precious minerals, fibers, and metals, the forms he created, which Harry pushed them to, while Harry actually created some aesthetically pleasing structures with his coiled piles of disassembled adornments and artifacts. Then their duel was interrupted by a greater one in the vast canyons beyond their level fields. The Cubsters noticed glowing objects hovering in the sky like hornets. They also resembled some of Pa's silver dagger-like sculptures. This swarm tormented another flock of giant iron birds. The Cubsters climbed the steepest hill and gazed in awe at the towering, bipedal, multi-armed beings in their bronze costumes. They aimed flashing torch-like rods at the vessels in the sky. With their unified telepathic aura, the Cubsters understood that these titans were at war with each other. One side called themselves gods, and they addressed the other side as aliens. Yet the aliens called themselves gods, and the other side aliens. Perhaps ETs was the common denominator, the Cubsters speculated. Or perhaps they were lower intelligence. The gods came from portals in the sky, and the aliens came from the most remote stars. They deciphered that much, but the Cubsters still couldn't understand why these giants were fighting. They became more perplexed when they saw some of their beloved mountains and trees get crushed by comets fired from the floating daggers that the aliens rode on, and the gods fired back comets of their own, which roared through the forest like fiery tsunamis. If these tribes are so advanced, then why do they behave like animals fighting for a carcass? Wondered the Cubsters. They're going to destroy everything if we don't act, they cried. But how do we stop giants? We're just Cubsters. Their tools and machines are too much. They're, they'll tear us to pieces. What do we do, Pa? I think I can deflect their rays with my structures. They're multi-layered crystal gold mirrors that can absorb and redistribute any energy. I use them to harness the rays of the sun and even other stars to power our simple technology. But there's too many of them, too many rays from all angles. It's like trying to dry up a thunderstorm. No, yelled Harry. I see their weakness. It was his greatest defiance yet. Though their machines have many parts and come from other worlds, they're still made up of basic elements and substances, and their attack formations can be infiltrated and subdued, like locusts caught in a rainstorm. Pa, I'll show you their openings and weak points so that you can aim your deflecting rays. You might be right, Harry. Let's give it a try, Cubsters. Under Harry's guidance, Pa aligned his sculptures in a way that the great yet distant rays of the deities were reduced to mere flashes upon reaching the Cubsters' circle of monuments, which acted as a television dial to switch around the numerous channels, reprogramming them as well. Their energetic tidal waves were reduced to puddles, which in turn were splashed back by the Cubsters' devices, becoming gravitational whirlpools which drained their tsunamis at the source, and the great aircraft of the gods and aliens were swept up and smashed together. In an attempt to target the source of this disturbance, the perplexed titans flew up higher in the skies, and some charged down the hills, but the Cubsters kept repositioning the sculptures to the point that Harry no longer needed to guide them, nor did Pa have to show them what material to use. Each Cubster saw the relevance and interdependence of all materials, distances, and angles in their role of creator greater balance. This epiphany of harmony paved the way for an even deeper one. They realized that Harry wasn't so bad, and that Pa, though he is good, wasn't too good, or too good for anyone. Good and bad unbalance each other, which results in vicious cycles of chaos, while balancing out the positive and negative enables one to coordinate the diverse options and possibilities for the sake of creating an all-supporting axis. This revelation also made the Cubsters realize that not only could others' efforts be appreciated, but they themselves could contribute more if they allow others to be, which results in uncompromising cooperation. The warring Titans gave up trying to identify, much less control the source of all this atmospheric turbulence. The supreme beings retreated back to their worlds, saying to their superiors, the environment there is too harsh to fight for, much less colonize. The Cubsters cherished their victory, their stronger sense of unity since they appreciated Harry. They also appreciated each other on a far greater level. They were all radiant, wise, beautiful, brilliant in their own way, but they mourned over what they had lost, the precious trees, flowers, hills, and innocent animals. They meditated and prayed in such a way that all wishes and needs were fulfilled, and all traumas healed. They achieved this by simply yet deeply asking nature, the cosmos, God's change, what can be done to prevent further tragedies? How can history unwind itself into our story, not repeat itself? They heard the voice of every being, known and unknown, deceased and unborn. All consciousness shared the same thought patterns for once by being one. All of history's horrors, traumas, crimes, wars, every success and failure was experienced by not only the victims, but also by the perpetuators and accomplices. They felt each other's success and pain, rejection, loneliness, and disappointment. Their compassion and empathy absorbed the agonies of the forgotten, and those who died tragically were automatically reborn in greater bodies, since their fate was acknowledged, remembered. So those who died the worst ways were automatically resurrected just by one acknowledging them, their name. No horror or deed of evil was too great for the bottom. No horror or deed of evil was too great for the bottomless well of compassion. The greatest evil is no match for the greatest good, nor the worst wound to the most pleasurable hide. The guilty redeemed themselves by treating those who abused them the way they would have liked to have been treated, which paradoxically allowed all evildoers to be forgiven by those they hurt. This unified consciousness permeated even the nightmares and mental afflictions of every tormented mind. The hellish visions and hopeless thoughts were transformed into visions of divine inspiration. So those, even the evil, the corrupt people, felt their own pain and why they did it. This grand healing allowed the ruined lands of the Cubsters to be restored in another simulation, which we recall through dreams and shamanistic visions. For the apocalyptic war between the tribe of Titans never happened. Now even the gods and aliens conversed with the Cubsters, the rest of the universe as well. Everything they needed was there, since the karmic implications and chaotic chain reactions of conflicting past, present time periods, and futures were resolved. This was truly the new beginning. Okay, I forgot to mention, I wrote this in 2014, I believe. All right, thank you.